Open borders advocacy is all the rage right now. Social justice warriors, lefty academics, urbanite journalists, they're all pushing the idea that citizenship is discriminatory. Borders are racist. People are all the same, so why not just let them all come here? Of course, as members of the upper class, they won't have to immediately live with the result of their actions. The working class does, but since they're working class advocates in name only, they don't have to worry about that. It's something like Neil deGrasse Tyson whining on Twitter that he has to go through customs at the airport, while still living in a walled estate. And speaking of Twitter, as a Korean, I just want to remind everyone, US-drawn borders are always violent. Borders don't protect people, they kill. Borders defend imperial interests, not the people whose lives they tear asunder. As a Korean, I wonder if you understand that the only reason you're on Twitter is because of your northern border, you idiot. Yeah, this is the average intelligence level of the typical open borders advocate. They also tend to tip their hand very easily. For example, Nick Gillespie's reaction to Trump getting partial funding for the wall back in December. Shut it down. Wall is bullshit. Remember, when people oppose the wall, it's not because it won't work, it's because it will work. And the journalistic class has no problem tripping all over themselves in the pursuit of this goal. You've gone from the TSA is a waste of money that costs lives, to Trump is sacrificing the TSA over his wall, eh, Vox? The world comes at you fast. This all centers around Trump's rejection of the UN Global Compact on migration.
We recognize the right of every nation in this room to set its own immigration policy in accordance with its national interests, just as we ask other countries to respect our own right to do the same, which we are doing. That is one reason the United States will not participate in the new Global Compact on migration. Migration should not be governed by an international body unaccountable to our own citizens. Ultimately, the only long-term solution to the migration crisis is to help people build more hopeful futures in their home countries. Make their countries great again.
Here's the actual text of the document. It's titled Global Compact for Safe, Orderly, and Regular Migration. It's a non-binding UN compact, meaning that nations won't be legally bound to uphold the contents of the compact, but it's probably a globalist foot in the door. I can see one problem right off the bat, though. Migration is illegal. Immigration's not illegal, but immigration is when you apply to immigrate to another country legally. Migration, on the other hand, simply means going there, often not through the proper channels, and therefore often illegally. In the United States, crossing the border illegally is a felony. Imagine if the UN pushed a compact justifying another felony crime. Something like, I don't know, a global compact for safe, orderly, and regular tax evasion. It would be ridiculous, but here we are. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's easy enough to find if you want to read it yourself, but here's the basic rundown. The compact's text doesn't distinguish between legal and illegal immigrants. It doesn't distinguish between asylum-seeking refugees running from threat of imminent death and economic migrants moving to take advantage of a rich nation's social safety net. What it does distinguish is the difference between regular and irregular migration. Regular migration meaning happening constantly, and irregular migration meaning migration happening only for a short period of time. It also compels governments to create and promote pro-migrant propaganda. A number of countries have abstained from the compact. As I said before, the USA has outright refused to sign it.
Only by upholding national borders, destroying criminal gangs, can we break this cycle and establish a real foundation for prosperity.
A number of Eastern European countries have also refused to sign.
We are under accusations in Europe many times of being nationalistic. Now, the thing is the following. We are a country which never will give up the right to make the decision about the future of Hungary on our own. We will never give up the right to make a decision on our own with whom we would like to live together in our country. We will never give up the right to decide about whom we would like to enter, whom we would like to let enter the territory of our country and whom we don't. We will always be a nation of freedom fighters. We don't like colonialism. Sometimes when the French foreign minister or French president speaks about Hungary, they speak as if we were a colony of them. So I think mutual respect, it is what is lacking from the global set of foreign policies currently.
And the entire rest of the world has cucked out. Of particular disappointment is my home country of Canada, where Trudeau happily signed our sovereignty away. It's no surprise because even as Canada's a nation of only 30 million people or so, Trudeau's long-term goal is 1 million migrants coming to Canada a year. Come on, Maxime Bernier, we need you. The CBC might spin your tweet that Canada needs immigrants who share our values, not oppose them, in as negative a light as it wants, but the majority of Canadians agree with you. But Europe's going full-on pro-economic migrant, to the point that it's now even illegal to publicly criticize migration. This is translated from Swedish, but this watchdog group that I can't really pronounce has claimed to report 214 online messages criticizing migration, with 144 convictions for incitement against ethnic groups coming from those reports. In the UK, if you have legitimate complaints about the behaviors of migrants IRL, that will be considered a hate crime, and you'll be dragged out of your house and charged with breaching the peace.
I'm just going to say to you, if other people, and this is, nobody's allowed to do it, okay? Right. For some reason, they think they're separate.
Right.
And they can do it, nobody else, it doesn't matter.
Well,
and that's what the problem is that they're being treated differently to everybody else according to the rules.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Right.
It shouldn't be.
I've been told
but
it's
you,
allowed to happen.
Yeah,
okay?
Why? Why?
Why
is it allowed?
I don't question everything. Otherwise, you never get anywhere.
So you go against the regulations of the park because...
You have to ban all sort of exercise.
Because my boss
So what's the
says
point
so.
of having regulations if you don't follow them? You're not even telling me. Are you going to arrest me or what?
Open the door, please, Amy. Otherwise, we'll have to...
What is your name? What is your name?
Please open
What is your name?
This is PC Barrett.
Sorry?
Open the door.
Wait, what's your name?
PC Lambourne Delta Lima 054.
PC Lambourne.
Yes,
And why are you outside my door?
because I need to speak to you.
About what?
PC Barrett is also here, Charlie Bravo 05.
About what? What about?
Otherwise, we'll have to force the door open.
You know, you do not have to force my door open. I've done nothing wrong, so I don't...
Open the door and let me speak to you.
Who's called you?
Please open the door.
This is just so weird. This is very surreal.
Okay. Well, open the door, please, Amy, so we can speak with you.
And you're not going to tell me what it's about? Alright, so, what time is it? It's 10 to 9 in the morning, on a Tuesday morning, and the police are at my door, filming. I can see your footage going, and I'm going to open my door, and I'm filming what's going on. You're not coming in.
Fine.
No,
I need
you're
to
not coming.
You
no,
need to come out then.
You're not. Okay. What are you doing?
You need to come out.
What are you doing?
This time you're under arrest,
About
okay?
for what?
Preventing the course of justice.
What course of justice?
Do not resist us.
What are you
Do
doing?
not resist us.
Rely on it in court. Anything you say may be given evidence.
Me. Ow!
My
Okay,
assistant
look,
got your...
this
Right, let go.
Hands behind your back. Leave your...
And if you make those legitimate complaints online instead, it won't be a hate crime, but it will be what they call a hate incident, and cops will show up at your doorstep to check your thinking.
Just want to get this on video because you're recording as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, you're saying that my ability to express my freedom of speech on a website is being rescinded because you have a problem with it personally?
No, I've not said that you can't use forums or post.
So who's saying you here then?
As you said, it's freedom of speech.
Right.
It's more about the content of what you've put.
So what have you got a problem with?
Some comment that you've said you're going to drag somebody out of an office, an MP, you're going to drag it out of an office onto the street and question
Based
it.
on a hypothetical situation?
Yeah, but all I'm asking, I'm not saying you can't use it, or you shouldn't be using it, I'm just asking you to be mindful about what you're putting on there.
Alright,
In
so...
case it's deemed as inciting.
Yeah, let's put the situation into context, right? So, based on something that may or may not happen, an action could be taken, right? So how can you have a problem with that?
I'm not saying we've got a problem with it.
Right.
I've been asked to come and speak to you to make you aware, okay, that your comments are visible online and we can
Oh,
see
I know
them.
that. I've been doing it for, what, 20 years?
Yeah.
Yeah?
And you've got every right to do that. I've not got
So
an issue
why are
with it.
you here then?
Because I've just explained that to you.
You haven't.
It's the fact of what you said, and then you said, I can't do this alone.
Yeah.
Who wants to join me?
Right.
So it can be seen as sort of inciting something to happen.
Inciting what?
And criticizing migration in any capacity is set to become a full-on hate crime very soon.
And one basic element of this new agreement is the extension of the definition of hate speech. The agreement wants to criminalize migration speech. Criticism of migration will become a criminal offense. And media outlets, and that also concerns you, that give room to criticism of migration can be shut down. The Compact for Migration is legalization of mass migration. It's declaring migration as a human right. So in fact, it will become impossible to criticize Ms. Merkel's welcome migrants politics without being at risk to be jailed for hate speech. So this agreement, to our humble opinion, is a coup d'etat of pro-migrant liberal globalists. And it will greatly benefit multinationals. Because, you know, countries who import the third world will become the third world. And it's absolutely clear, and you all know that in third world countries, multinationals dictate the rules. It will become impossible to state that integration of migrants from Islamic countries in Western cultures is impossible. It will become impossible to mention the fact that mass migration deteriorates the Western welfare systems, and the fact that mass migration leads to explosive surge of rape and murder.
As migrants began to flood into the first world's lower class areas, the people already living there began to complain, and with good reason. Regardless of the issues of clashing cultures, when you introduce a large amount of low-skilled workers into a location, the price of labor drops. The working class is hurt, and the multinational corporations benefit by being able to pay people less for the same work. A globalist lefty, a third-way Democrat, as they're often called in the US, they'll clothe themselves in the language of the white savior, that we have a moral duty to bring in these downtrodden third-worlders and help them live better lives here. But they're really doing it because it helps their friends in big business save more money, while bankrupting the working class they claim to advocate for. The ideological backing for this corporatist as compassion sleight of hand has been pushed by social justice warriors for some time now, and unlike their superiors further up in the food chain, they genuinely believe they're doing good by bringing migrants in, and their poor understanding of economics means they actually don't know just how much they're hurting the proletariat. I'm not surprised, because you'd have to have no economic sense whatsoever to actually be a communist. But you can see this ideological backing in articles like Vox's The Case for Open Borders. What would you think about a law that said that blacks couldn't get a job without the government's permission, or women couldn't get a job without the government's permission, or gays, or Christians, or anyone else? It's a pretty easy question. Obviously, such a law is discriminatory on its face, serves no rational purpose, and is unacceptable in a liberal democracy. So why exactly is it that people who are born on the wrong side of the border have to get government permission just to get a job? That's a line of reasoning that really tugs at the heartstrings, isn't it? We're all human. Why should it be legal to discriminate against non-citizens? Well, the answer to that is because in terms of participating in the political life of a democratic country, race or gender or sexuality or ethnicity or faith or even nationality in some instances are all superficial distinctions. But citizenship is not. Citizens are who the country is for. It's who's taxed. It's who has the franchise. It's who can run for office. I understand at one point that excluding citizenship based on race was legal, and it was wrong. Excluding citizenship based on class was once also legal, and it was also wrong. However, those distinctions are gone now. Those superficial reasons have been rectified. Now, the only distinction that excludes citizenship is based on not being a citizen. And even then, there are proper ways to become one. But the radical left now wants to exclude citizenship from citizens. That's why you get Guardian pieces like The Demise of the Nation State, where the basic premise is, oh, we're all humans, there's no real distinctions between us, let's remove all nations, have no borders, and let people go where they want and do what they want with no restrictions. And I mean, fair enough, I'm no fan of feudalism, where peasants were tied to the land they worked and couldn't leave it. But that's not our situation right now, is it? Right now you can go where you want and do what you want, as long as you meet the qualifications. But the problem for these ideologues is the qualifications themselves. For all the railing about power politics these people do, they don't understand power politics. A nation has borders because that is the government saying, okay, so we're going to take responsibility for everything that goes on in this area. The civil services, the environment, the economy, defense, human rights, all of it. And if you have a problem with how your government is handling its responsibilities in the first world, you can vote them out of office. But that doesn't mean that the concept of responsibility itself is flawed. When properly set up, a free nation is the best way to secure the human rights of the individual. And stuff like open borders or the erasure of nations go against that. I can already hear the ideologue's objection in my head. Just because it's not a nation doesn't mean human rights won't be respected. You can have larger international governments that still maintain the rule of law, like the EU's Empire of the Good. And stupidly enough, that Guardian article also wanted to bring back empires. Empires were not democratic, but were built to be inclusive of all who came under their rule. It is not the same with nations, which are founded on the fundamental distinction between who is in and who is out, and therefore harbor a tendency towards ethnic purification. Jesus Christ, you have to be dense to actually think this. Oh wait, they probably don't think this. It's probably just a power play by an ideologue wanting their ideology to be at the top of the new imperial order after they topple the current one. The human proclivity to appeal to the perceived superior authority of a larger bureaucracy is one of the fundamental problems of the radical left. We see this happening right now with Brexit, where Brexiteers are treated as rebellious teenagers to the patient, all-knowing father that is the EU. It's also the most contradictory position within the radical left, considering how they talk about the destruction of value systems, hierarchies, nation-states, and so on, but whatever. Just like the rightest answer to any given problem is outsource it to the marketplace so people can act as they wish, the leftist answer to any given problem is have the government sort it out for the good of all. And obviously both viewpoints have their merit. But there's a serious danger to creating an ever-expanding bureaucracy. It becomes too large, too resistant to change, too deceitful, too detached from the people it's meant to govern, too corrupt and potentially corrupt, and too willfully blind. I've described many things like this on my channel before. Feminism, the EU, multinational corporations, etc. All of these things are ever-expanding bureaucracies, constantly in a state of advanced decay, constantly collapsing on the people that reside within them. As a quick example, this is probably why the joke of the LGBTQIA+ acronym infinitely expanding outward with new letters is such a funny one, because the community, as it were, is a community based on being the other. And there's infinite ways to be different from the norm. And what do we see happening to that community? As more letters get added, the community fractures, and the whole thing turns into a complete catastrophe. In other words, every time you see the left eating itself, like with the TERFs going after the trans activists, or Muslims attacking a trans woman in Paris, or something along those lines, that's the collapse of the social justice bureaucracy in action. Sometimes they get away with it because they can invent new terminology to hide their deceit. Making fun of virgins is sex shaming, for example, so they make fun of incels now, but it's all the same thing. Criminalizing the criticism of migration, even as its ill effects are obvious to everyone, is an action that meets the definition of a failing ideology. Too large, too resistant to change, too detached from the people, too corrupt, and too willfully blind. The bureaucracy is showing us that it is crumbling. And the ideologues either don't care because they're charlatans, or they don't notice, because cognitive dissonance doesn't exist if you're on the right side of history.